Hi, this is Chloe here at Inner Whispers, and today I'm absolutely delighted to be unboxing the Spirit Within Tarot. This is a fabulous deck created by Stephen Bright of Tiferet Tarot. And Stephen has been a friend and a fellow blogger for years. We've been sort of reading one another's blogs and we've met several times in person. And he's just an absolutely great guy, a really good tarot reader, and also he would call himself more of a graphic designer than an artist. But you know, what he brings together and what he brings to the images that he creates really is wonderful. This wasn't the very first deck that he ever created in its totality. However, it's the first one that he decided to sort of move ahead with in terms of publishing. And so I was really glad for him when he found a publisher in Schiffer, and it looks like they've done a really delightful job with this. It's a fabulous deck with very seemingly simple sort of shadow cards, so you don't have expressions or anything to read from, but you have all of the character that is brought in a person's posture and the symbolism around them, and very nuanced shading and colouring in the cards. So I'm really excited, you can probably tell, to open this deck and take a look. So here we are with the box. As you can see, it's a kind of tarot-sized box rather than sometimes the Schiffer ones are rather larger, but still with a little magnetic clasp. Let's take a look inside. So as I say, there's a little magnetic clasp here and a picture of Stephen on the inside with a little description. Then we have the little white book, which is quite small, but which I'm sure will be very nicely written. And this has colour images, very small colour images of each of the cards. And there are sort of I am, a more general discussion, and then keywords for each card. And just one spread at the back, page 94. Let's take a quick look. So just a little 5-card spread, always nice. That's the book. And here we have the cards. These are a little bit more muted than they look in this image. So let's go through these. Beautiful, energetic fool dancing on a cliff edge. A magician juggling his different objects. A very calm, serene feeling high priestess sat on her throne. And I love the feel, such a natural feel to this Empress. Interesting that it isn't sort of greens and whatnot that you might expect. There's a very calm, muted feel to the colours here as well. The Emperor. So it's kind of a combination of modern and other sort of symbolism. You know, he has the Ankh, and here we have the Hierophant. This, I believe, was a teacher from the Kabbalah Institute where Stephen often goes. Beautiful lovers with a bird flying overhead. And a skateboarding chariot. It's quite interesting that strength, it's a more distant view that we have, a different perspective, and the moon beyond, or perhaps that's the sun, hard to say. I would go with moon. And a duller moon in the Hermit. So you really see the power that there is just in the simplicity of the shadow of a person. The Wheel of Fortune, which looks very like he's really falling, and he's really climbing, and he's really sitting pretty. Justice, with all the clouds that brings, and the sun shining at the tip of the blade. A gorgeous Hanged Man. I love the tree in this. It's so evocative in and of itself. and a beautiful feminine death, angelic. Temperance, this is one of my favourite cards in the deck. I like Temperance anyway, but just the way that Stephen balanced this out with the two different colours, the DJ mixing sounds, and that it's kind of yin-yang type thing with the colours of the records and the colours behind the DJ. So for me that really works well. You need to get things at the right time, on the right beat, the right mix of music, and then find a way to bring things together to get that perfect smooth mix. The Devil, with a little child reaching up to this Capricorn devilish figure. The Tower, with people falling, and the tower itself looks like the whole thing is sort of keeling over rather than struck by lightning and falling apart. That's quite interesting. And the Star, full of hope. I love the little bird. The Moon with the wolf and the dog, he's kept that, and the towers are in a different position, so it gives it a slightly different feel, a stronger emphasis on the moon, the clouds. And the Sun with Stonehenge, which I think is a gorgeous touch. Judgment kind of playing a trumpet. It feels a lot more modern and jazzy than your traditional. And yet that hearing your call, hearing your vocation, that wake up, it makes me think of like a reveille in the sort of military scene as well. So it has some other touches coming into it. And a charming dancer for the world. Our nice, simple, strongly held Ace of Wands. The Two of Wands, he's holding that globe almost like it's a football. It's a fun touch. And the Three of Wands, ships coming in. Four of Wands. And an embattled Five of Wands. It's interesting that here one figure is much stronger than the others, so that gives us more of a perspective on who is who, whereas in many other cards you could be any of the figures. This gives us more of a specific choice. And the Six of Wands on his horse. Seven of Wands. I like here we have the more traditional symbolism. You can't see the people holding the other wands, so is he just sort of defending against his own ideas almost? And the Eight of Wands really brings that sense of movement home. The wands are in movement, the person is in movement, whereas we have a much calmer Nine of Wands. Interesting kind of defensive position. It's almost like line in the sand more than anything. And a thoroughly burdened Ten of Wands. Our playful page. Looks like he's kind of looking out at us questioningly, even though you can't see his face. The Knight of Wands, much more on the move. The Queen of Wands with her charming little cat. And the King of Wands in his director's chair. A very romantic Ace of Wands. I love the bird and just the feeling of the cup. It has, I don't know, there's a romanticism to this. It looks almost like cherry blossom or something like that, that brings that delicacy into it. And then, a delightful date night, evening out, dancing and partying with your friends. And interesting that here it's kind of a waiter is bringing this offering. So works nicely still, because hey, spirit moves in mysterious ways, right? And Five of Cups. I like that he is still distant from the sort of village, so to speak, but it has an exotic feel to it as well, and it's a much bigger bridge, and yet we also have this touch of cherry blossom echoing the ace. And the Six of Cups, very clearly children, and so cutely hand in hand. It's lovely touches here. Seven of Cups, a really dreamy feel to it. And the Eight of Cups, that clear path that she's walking on to walk away. Nine of Cups. Another interesting touch, he has these almost like trophies behind him, and yet one is also at his feet. So that gives us a different kind of feel to it. And then quite traditional in some ways Ten of Cups. They have 2 dogs instead of having any kids, and yes, you can read this couple in a number of different ways, I would say. I see them as 2 guys, but you could see it other ways if you want to. The shadow opens it up a lot more in that regard. Page of Cups with a gorgeous little fish leaping out of his cup, and I love the way that the drops bring movement to that, whereas the Knight of Cups much more just gazing into his cup. The Queen of Cups, although she's gazing, it seems, I don't know, more an appreciation, like someone raising a cup of tea to sniff it, whereas he really looks like he's looking into his cups. She's more appreciating what is in the cup, whereas the King of Cups is a little more distant from his cup. So much there, even in this simplicity. The Ace of Swords, we see a real change in the colour palette here, and the Two of Swords, blindfolded, and it is a male figure here. Equally, the Three of Swords, we have this bleeding wound from under his plasters, and the Four of Swords, a much more modern feel to it, with someone lying on a sofa rather than a knight on a stone or an effigy. Five of Swords has an almost, I don't know, dancer feel to it. There's still that, these ones feel defeated, this one's just given up, and this one's, feeling desperately sad. And Six of Swords, it's interesting here that he's the one polling himself, and the swords aren't stuck into the bottom of the boat as you sometimes see, nor are they left behind. They're just piled up in the boat, so taken along. Seven of Swords, tense in the background. I like the trees, and sort of sneaking away. A lovely Eight of Swords. Her blindfold is there but less apparent, and the Circle of Swords is a little bit tighter around her, and the gap, the ability to walk through them, is a little less obvious. So once again, lots of little touches to add different potential meanings. Nine of Swords really being emphasising the mental aspect to these, and the Ten of Swords all stabbed into his back, and yet he's still standing. I love this kind of samurai type Page of Swords, whereas the Knight feels a lot more mature and more somehow battle ready. He seems more playful with his sword. And the Queen of Swords, journaling, thinking, writing, gazing out. And the King of Swords, more determined. Moving into the Pentacles, nice simple ace. A wonderful monocycle riding, juggling Two of Pentacles, yet still with that ship in the background, hinting at tradition. And the Three of Pentacles, the craftspeople, one looking onto a sketch, another gazing on anyhow, and some guy painting. Four of Pentacles, held close to his chest. The Five of Pentacles. The hard times isn't as apparent in weather. We don't really see weather here, but there's the night-timeness and the being outside of the city. And Six of Pentacles, one of those sort of charity boxes, very obviously, so that sense of giving, charity. Seven of Pentacles, standing back a bit to see what's happening, how things are growing, how much more work still needs to be done. And the Eight of Pentacles. Stephen himself has done a lot of work with material. He does gorgeous tarot bags. He did some tarot-based shoes as well, and clothes design and so on. So you can really see the kind of apprentice, the manual labour side of things there, and obviously a very personal touch. So that's a lovely thing. And the Nine of Pentacles, I do always love when it is a lady in the garden, and she has a feeling of elegance to her, something like out of a 1950s movie somehow. And the Ten of Pentacles, with the dog, the person here, the family. So he has kept very much to a traditional Rider-Waite base, and yet the cards do have their own touches of originality, their own little nuances. The pages do all have a feeling of being younger. That's very clear despite the shadows, so it's been done very nicely. I also really like the way the text has been done, so a very clear Knight of Pentacles, and then you can sort of see it in the background as well in a less clear, and yet it sort of emphasizes it and blends it in without actually having a separation of title and artwork. And obviously they're also borderless, which will be lovely when you actually come to reading it in sort of bigger readings. And here the Knight of Pentacles has a lawnmower, so gorgeous touch. A couple of little bunnies for the Queen of Pentacles, and the King of Pentacles is just lounging around on his gorgeous balcony, so that element of luxury, and he has his lovely pentacle and yeah, a wonderful rooftop balcony. So that is the Spirit Within Tarot. The back is fully reversible and with these interesting sort of shadow. This is the World Dancer shadow inside and out, creating a kind of mandala effect, which is a really lovely touch. As with Schiffer decks, it's a little too thick to hold, though less so than is often the case with Schiffer decks. And the size is quite nice. It's not overly big, so they're quite easy to hold. They shuffle just fine, and let's try a little riffle. So they also riffle quite nicely. I actually like these better than I have done Schiffer stock in the past. They feel a little bit less clunky than I've often found Schiffer decks to be in the past, which is I'm really grateful for, because, you know, I can see this being a firm favourite for years to come. So they're a little bit sticky, but that will wear off in time, I'm sure. And that may also just be me getting used to the deck. So overall, they feel fairly good. And let's take that one. So this is definitely a keeper. Blessed be.